Jess is coming.
Okay, do we want to close the doors just for sound?
Or can we close the doors? Okay, thanks.
Okay. Okay. Hello, everybody. Can you hear me okay if I don't use a mic? Is this all right? Okay. It's just easier to like do stuff with my hands. So this is going to be, I don't remember what we actually called it, but it's basically like an introduction to like wiring, circuits, LEDs, that kind of thing. Has anyone done a lot with like, yes, you've done so much wire? All right, yes, keep me honest if I get really crazy here. Again, this is sort of entry level stuff, so if you have no experience, it's fine. I guess let me ask the opposite. Is there anyone here who's like, never touches stuff, it sounds really intimidating, scary, right? All right, your hand went up the fastest. You can come up here right now.
This happened last time too.
Don't be so eager.
Pointing into the soldering iron.
Yeah, don't touch lettering. So,
Stinks.
wiring up an LED sounds really hard, right? It's not scary. Yeah. Okay. Take this battery. Take this LED. See, there's two legs on that?
Yeah.
Put the long leg of it to the flat, non-textured side of the battery, and the other leg touching the other. So just kind of slide it. You got it. You've done it.
Oh.
You've wired it.
Oh, I did it.
Now wrap this tape around it.
Okay.
Nice and tight. All right, cram it into there. Close this over it. It's gonna go upside down. Oops. If I printed this well enough.
You scared me.
All right, so
That was like
it's over
sizzling.
there.
And I was like, it's on fire.
All right, tell you what, bring this over. We can hold it for a minute. And talk through it. Shouldn't be. There's nothing on it.
It's smoking though.
All right, let's do this.
Okay.
Take that.
Yes.
Crumple this around it.
Okay.
Stick everything into this ball. All right, you've made a light up product.
Yay!
We're done. No, you can have it. Oh, cherish it forever. All right, so it's not scary. It's really just setting up a circuit. It's terrible. Well, it's scary for a bunch of people probably, right? So I want to talk a little bit about what happened. I didn't bring a presentation for it, so actually let's do this the really dramatic way where we're terrible. All right. This is what we just did. This is what just happened, right? We made a circuit. This is a fancy way to draw it, right? So this is a battery with a positive and negative side, right? And all we had to do was connect through an LED and then back around, and that pushes the electricity through and it makes the LED light up. Now, it worked for this particular case because the battery I have was a 3 volt, I think, and the LED I got was set up for 3 volts. So you don't need to do anything fancy about it. Electricity kind of works like water. Like if you have a big tub of water, right, and I set it up here, and I've got like, I stick a tube in it, and then I've got a tub down here, the water's just gonna flow, right? Gravity's gonna pull it. Gravity's not what runs electricity, but it's the same way. It's like a flow that kind of runs through the circuit. So as long as you have a supply of electricity that isn't too much, like imagine like you don't want to send a tsunami through, right, and like wipe out your LED, and it's not so little that it makes no effect, you're going to get to light up. Now, if this battery was like really high powered and it flowed through, it would blow out your LED, right? It's like too much, like I said, tsunami, right? If this is really low and this needs kind of more electricity to get brighter, it's still gonna light up, but it's going to be dimmer because there's only like a little bit of flow going through. So, can anyone guess what would happen if we took the same battery and we just started adding a bunch of LEDs to it?
The LEDs will get dimmer and dimmer and dimmer.
Dimmer and dimmer and dimmer, right? Not right, actually. What's gonna happen is we're gonna light all these LEDs up with the same amount, because it's the same amount of flow going through, but your battery is gonna run out faster because it's powering more. So you can kind of rig as many as you want as long as the voltage lines up, but your battery life is like decreasing exponentially. So something to keep in mind if you're ever wanting to wire something and add LEDs, you would need to have more battery supply for running a whole lot of it. Let's see. Have kind of a lesson plan, guys. Let's talk about LEDs actually for a minute. If you guys want to pass this around and everyone just pull one out so you can see them up close. These are teeny tiny dudes. So I also did a diagram for you guys. But once you get them, I want you to kind of look at them. Oh, these are sticky ones.
You can stick it up on the wall over there.
Yeah, start laying them out. Here, Allison, stick this somewhere. My beautiful assistant.
I just heard that the other day.
All right, so once you guys get them, and again, these are teeny tiny, so a little hard to see. But you're going to notice there's a long leg and a short leg. So the long leg is the anode. And if you ever cut these legs off, or you get ones where like you've altered them or you've soldered them, or you're pulling something out of something else and these aren't the same length, you can also look inside the light itself. And again, these are teeny tiny, so it might be hard to see. But the long leg always has kind of the shorter piece of metal inside the bulb itself, and the shorter one has the long. So basically what this means is it's polarized, so the flow only works in one direction. So if we put the LED, so real simple, it means if I put the long leg on the wrong side, it doesn't light up. Now it's not blowing up or destroying my light either, it's just not flowing through. So, and if you guys want to pass around a battery, I'll send a couple around. All you got to do is stick the long leg on the smooth side, and you will get a light happening.
No, you slide it over the battery.
Does this make sense so far? This is very basic terminology. I also, if this helps for my background, I got into, well, I had like a technology class in middle school where I learned about making a circuit. And then after that, everything else was just like figuring out, watching tutorials, trial and error, like reading up on stuff. So I might not always use the most accurate terms, but I can kind of describe how these work. So, what we've got so far is all well and good, but when that light dies, you're going to have to replace the battery. So which means you're going to have to take the entire thing apart. You'll have to take the entire thing apart, put a new battery in, tape it all up. If you're like wearing a costume, you can't like turn it off without opening it, right? It's kind of a hassle. So you want to add a switch into the circuit. And switches come in all shapes and sizes. Sorry, you're such a good assistant, Allison. I don't know what I'm doing. So, if you guys want to pass these around, this is just one style switch. You can get smaller, larger, but you'll see there's kind of two nodes at the bottom. So that's what you connect into a circuit. So here's my totally legit technical drawing of our circuit now. So before we just had a battery and an LED. So now all we have to do is have a switch. And all that is, again, if we're using the water analogy, if water's flowing, we're essentially like stopping the flow. We're blocking it completely. And then when you turn the switch on, it connects it and it continues, right? So, let's try a little experiment. I'm gonna use this other switch. Does someone want to come up and build a circuit with me? I don't fight hard. Yes, I saw a tentative hand. Now you're committed. All right, so what we're gonna do, and switches, it doesn't matter as much which direction they're going. If you get really fancy switches that have like actual like timers or like circuit boards within it, then it starts mattering, but these are kind of just basic, like it connects or it doesn't. So what we're gonna do, take this alligator clip, and these wires, long leg, short leg, you can bend them. They're pretty resilient. Obviously, if you just go back and forth, they'll eventually break. But we'll go ahead and bend these. If you'll clip one alligator clip to one side. There you go. I'm too old and shaky to do that. And clip this guy to the other side. So you always want to put your switch between your battery and your actual light. It stops the circuit afterwards, but to me, like your flow is always kind of going, so it's sort of still going through that light, even though it's not completing. I honestly don't know if it makes a difference, but I've always learned to put the switch first. So, which one was the long leg? This guy. All right, so let's go ahead and connect this black one to one end of this switch. This green one to the other end. So if you think about the diagram we've made, there's the light on the side, here's the switch on the top, now we have the battery, right? Make sure this is off, on. Okay, so we touch this, you go ahead and touch the other side. The switch is on, it lights up, and if we turn it off, it doesn't, right? So we've done exactly that, but we've added a switch in. Now, using alligator clips are kind of nice. Thank you. Yeah, everyone get a round of applause. So alligator clips are great if you're just trying to like figure out test stuff. They also make, oh, I didn't bring my circuit board. They make little boards where you can kind of plug and play, yes. These were kind of the first things I started playing with because to me, like, there's something about seeing like physically this kind of schematic. It helped me figure out and learn how to do stuff. So like, I'm connecting these wires, I'm adding a switch. And these guys are pretty cheap. So usually before I ever wire anything or solder or completely connect a circuit together, I will do something that's temporary and make sure everything's working right and there's no problems before I take the time to like go ahead and finish it. So let's talk about how we kind of finish and connect wires together. So the easiest way, maybe not easiest, but like you don't need any special equipment, is you can essentially use electrical tape. So when you're connecting wires together, you have to expose the metal parts of them, make sure they touch, and then make sure they'll stay together, right? But then you also want to cover up any of the metal that shows, because if it ends up touching other metal, you can short things out. And I mean, if you're working with something high voltage, you can get electrocuted. This stuff isn't going to bother you. Like I was holding a battery, we're fine. So you can do it with just electrical tape wrapping. You can solder, which is using metal to kind of bond the metal together and then cover that. I've seen people even use hot glue because it is non-conductive, so it's kind of doing both in once, it's connecting. So I'll talk about some of the drawbacks to each of these. Hot glue, the drawback is it's very difficult to take apart. Like let's say you glue everything together and then you need to change something. Now it's encased in a bunch of hot glue, so you either have to kind of melt everything down or just start again because you're kind of committed to it. Electrical tape's easy because you can kind of take it on and off, but it doesn't always look like the cleanest and tidiest. It's also not as strong because you're still just kind of wrapping wires together and then covering in tape. Soldering is probably the strongest way to do it because you're bonding metal around metal. It's not like a big glob of glue you have to get through. You can always kind of clip that metal apart and go again. And then there's heat shrink that will help finish that and kind of bond it. But you could also solder and wrap in just electrical tape. So if we're connecting wires together, the first thing we need to know how to do is how to splice the wire together or put them together. So brought a few different sizes. of wire. But essentially, you always want to expose. Maybe I should do this where you guys can see. Is it easier to see? Can you see me now? Can you see this now? There? How about there? Okay. So see how there's a little bit of exposed wire there? You always want at least this much. I usually err on the side of a little more just because, I don't know, I overcompensate a bit. But when you get this wire,
Use this to cut
to strip it.
Yes.
Yep. So when it comes like this, when you usually buy it, there's no metal exposed, right? So what you want is wire strippers. Now they have automatic wire strippers, which they look kind of just like, they're sort of like really fancy pliers where you put it in and when you just grip it, it sort of like cuts and pulls off all in one motion. I don't know, that's the lazy man's way. No, it's fantastic to do that way. I actually, just a long time ago, when there were still Radio Shacks about in my area, I got one of these, and if this helps you see. On it, they've got markings on how big your wire is, like what gauge of wire you have and where to strip it. So sometimes that helps. But the trick to this is essentially you just put about where you want to strip it. You do some twists. So basically this is cutting in enough that it should be cutting through the outside layer and not the wire. And then you just pull out. So now you can see I've got exposed wire and then it's stripped off like the outer casing, right? Who wants to try stripping some wire? Can you have those mirrorless pliers? All right, in the mask, the mysterious one.
Since I still have glasses.
All right, so I'll give you this. I've cut it flat. So you're going to go about to where the 16 is.
16?
Yep. And I usually go
About an inch? Or do you want 3/4 inch?
maybe about there. And honestly, like, you can do less is more, and you can always keep taking more off. Sometimes I'm like, I need a little more because I'm clumsy about it. Oh, you're right. There you go. So then just hold it close, and then sort of twist it. And go around a few times, and then you'll be able to just kind of pull it off.
And if you need these photos in out,
Around aisle 12? See, I don't even know that much. The nice thing is you buy them once, you have them for years. Like, they're not really dulling. Now see if you can just like... See if that...
It doesn't like me, Jenny.
I kind of give you hard mode. I gave you a small wire too. So let me see if I can
Got
get
it.
this guy. You got it.
It's just being stubborn, isn't it?
Yeah, so the smaller the size of your wire is,
I told you it doesn't like me.
you do though.
Yeah.
Let me see if you can get that plastic off. Perfect. So the smaller the wire is, I find the harder it is to get off. I'll do a larger one. This is perfect. So something you want to watch for too, and this one's easy, it's so tiny, there's only one wire in it. A lot of times if you get like a thicker wire, it's really a bundle of smaller wires inside. So something you always want to check when you do this is to make sure that in the process of stripping out the outside, you haven't cut and broken off any of the wires on the inside. You want to keep it as solid as possible because the more that goes away, the more fragile it's going to be and the less like you have connecting through. Did you manage to get it open? No, we're still working on it. Okay. While he's doing that, I'll get the bigger one and let a few of you try kind of opening these up as well, because I think part of it's practice. You kind of just get a motion for it and you can go really quick through it. But while he's opening that, let me show you guys how I usually like to connect these guys together. So, can you see, am I in the right place? Here? Okay. I tend to bend each side into little hooks. Let me bend it first and I'll show you. And this is why I end up taking off probably more than even that. So can you see there's two little hooks? Hopefully small enough. All right. So then I have them hooked together. And then I do a little twist, right? So essentially I've made two little loops, right, that are connecting like that. And then as you twist, they can get tighter and they have a lot of bonding points. Let me strip a little more of these. This would be easier to show with the big wire.
It's really in there.
I know. Here, let me do this way. It should be easier to see and to show. Here's a good example. So this guy's a bundle. Do you guys see that? All these wires. So when you cut these, make sure you haven't broke any off. I haven't. I'm actually going to strip a little more away so I can get real into this. There we go. So what you want to do is twist these so they all stay together. We'll do... strip this side. I need to get better about cooking show styling this where I pre-do it, but there's nothing about crafting that's like fast and exciting, guys. If that's not been made apparent by all my workshops this weekend. Come on, buddy. There we go. So same thing, make sure they're all intact. They are. Give it a twist. So you're working with one wire. That's a bunch of wires together. So I generally do a little hook. A little hook. And then the keys. And then I twist the other sides together so it's a nice and stable. This is the most important part, really. You want a stable connection with a lot of like touch points, right? When I first started, I didn't know what I was doing. I would just kind of twist the wires together. But if you can tug, like if you're just sort of like twisting them like buddies and you can tug, they'll kind of come undone, which is why I do the hook first and then twist them, right? So this is a nice solid bond. At this point, we could just wrap it in electrical tape and be done with it. But I'll show you guys soldering. Because again, this is something I feel like is kind of this was a scary thing for me when I first started wiring. I was like, oh, soldering, this sounds intimidating. I don't know what's going on. And then I forced myself to learn how to do it, and it's actually pretty easy. So this is like a super cheap setup. That's like an assist. These are, I don't even know the technical term for this. I don't know. I call them my extra hands because essentially they're going to hold the wire for you in these alligator clips.
Some places they actually call them helping hands.
Helping hand? Is that what they're called? Maybe
Sometimes.
I'm sure there's some like super fancy technical term like that I don't know. Sorry, guys. Anyway, you have it hold for you, not like super tight or anything, but it's just holding it in place. A trick I've seen, sometimes people take, you know, like spray paint caps. You can pull that off and kind of put a slice in each side, just a cut, and you can have a wire in each side and it'll hold for you if you don't want to invest. These aren't that expensive though. The other stuff I have in this setup, I have a soldering iron. Again, this is a super cheap guy. I had ordered just the cheapest knockoff one in. They actually make ones that are kind of guns. There's different styles. You can kind of figure out your preference. They also have ones that have different nibs. So if you end up working with something very tiny, you might want, you know, more pointed or thinner tips. These kits usually come with a sponge. Actually, it's sitting here. That you would wet in advance, and it's to help kind of wipe the solder off as you go. Because what you don't want to leave is tons of solder on your gun. The gun is there more to like heat up everything, but you don't want it just sitting hanging out on your soldering gun. This is awesome. It's something you can use instead of a sponge. So it's, I don't know, it's like a Brillo pad made especially for this. So this is to clean, you just kind of poke it a few times and it takes any solder that's on your gun off for you. So I've just started liking this more than the sponge because then I don't have to wet a sponge and worry about it sitting there. So that's kind of the rig there. And then solder, here we go. So there's three kinds of solder. There's rosin core solder, which I like to use. There's a lead-free solder, which is more environmentally sound and I should probably start using. And then there's also silver solder. So silver solder is used more for like you're welding things together. You wouldn't use that in this case. So don't get silver solder for this kind of work. You want like a rosin core solder of some sort made for this. And you can use either, if you don't know what kind you have, but you know it's not silver solder, but you don't know if you have lead free or not, when you melt this, this ends up being really like shiny and glossy looking. Lead free looks kind of like, dull, like fogged glass almost, something like that. But either of those will work for this. So, also, and this isn't gonna like fume everyone out or anything in the room, but if you're ever working in soldering, I tend to have my face like up in it, and so you can get fumes. So I recommend wearing a safety mask that is like, you can get different like attachments for them that are graded for different things. So some are for paint, some are for like dust particles, some are all the way for fumes. So you want to make sure you have one that's going to keep you from just breathing the fumes in. So I am going to, I'm only going to do one, so I'm going to live on the edge. Do as I say, not as I do, guys. But I want to talk you through this process. So when I first started soldering as well, just kind of teaching myself, I always thought you would like heat the solder up and like you let it like drop onto what you were trying to seal, but that's not good because even if you're holding it right above it, the time it takes for it to drop down, it's already cooling, the bond's not so great. So the trick really is we're going to end up heating from underneath. We're going to touch the tip of this to that metal that I've exposed. And then we're going to let it heat up that metal. Then we're going to touch the solder to the metal wires that we've heated. And that's what's going to then melt the solder. So you're essentially melting the solder directly to it. Also, if you have one of these, be careful. If you're keeping your solder in this holder, the holder's metal, and if you touch it with your hand, you'll get a burn. I totally don't know that from personal experience. Let's see. These also have a magnifying glass, which makes it a lot easier. It can help, too, to get a little solder on your gun in advance. We're going to kind of hold it to it and let it get warm. And you'll know when it's ready to go if you just kind of, like right now, I don't know if you guys can see this as well, but I'm tapping it. And at first it wasn't melting, but now it is. So, I'm not going to drip.
Just in case.
Noob.
Just in case.
Noob. All right, so I have basically covered the entire thing in solder. I'm already done. What I will do is let this cool and then I'll pass it around so you guys can kind of look at the joint. Oh, you can actually see the bad job I did because I did break one of the wires off. So you'll see that there's one little rogue guy hanging out. Again, do as I do, not as I say. What did I do with my red? There it is. So this one, like let's say this was all connected, part of the wired system, we would wrap it in electrical tape and just make sure that none of that metal is showing. That's going to, one, make it not conductive, but two, it's going to also help kind of hold that bond together because you've got like tape holding it in place, right? Tom, is my heat gun down here? Or is it up in the room? Is it down here? Will you grab it? So I'm going to do one more and then I'm going to show you guys how to use heat shrink, which is some of my favorite stuff, not just for wiring. I've actually used it to encase boning or finish the edges of boning. I've used it for like, I don't know, all sorts of things that it's not meant for, but basically, heat shrink are little tubes of plastic that are made to shrink to about half-ish their size once heat's applied.
Don't plug it in with it. Point it at her.
0 where it says
Crazy kid.
ah! All right, so twisting, hooking, twisting, hooking. Maybe the most boring class, I don't know. Wait till I get to the math part, guys. Ha!
That you weren't going to learn today.
Yeah,
Go down.
I'm never going to get into it.
Down.
Oh, down, sorry. what it sees. Okay, so once again, twisted. Let's see how this feels. Do you want to hand that around? We'll send that guy around for you guys to look at. You can also get much prettier joints than that. People who do this all the time can make them really beautiful. So something to remember when using heat shrink. I like buying them in these kits because you get a bunch of different sizes. So what you want, they're like little tubes, tubey tubes, and they come in all different sizes. So some of these that look flat are actually, you know, quite big tubes, right? You never want to use like a giant one on a tiny thing because it's only going to shrink so far and then it's not going to do the job. You want to get a tube that is just slightly bigger than what you're working with.
It's always good to sometimes test some of them so you know how far they shrink, because sometimes they'll shrink to like 1/3 or 1/4, and some only shrink to half.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Then you think you have the right size, and then it turns out to be too small or too big. I'm sorry.
Yep. And that's when I cover it in electrical tape, and it looks super not pro. I also tend to make the mistake of, so let's say I'm wiring this into a circuit, right? Once you connect everything, you can't really go back in time and then put this on because they're full tubes. You have to remember to slide the dang thing on before you connect. So like, if this was all wired up to something else, I'd have to untwist this and make sure these slide on. But since I'm doing kind of open ones, doesn't matter. I will tell you when you start doing this, you will forget, and then you'll kick yourself, and eventually you'll make a habit of always sliding this on first. But the idea is, this, like let's say we put this on first from here, twisted this together, you would want to slide it out of your way because the heat from the soldering gun can also kind of melt and cause it to shrink. So a lot of times you want to make sure you give yourself enough wire in between your connections to move stuff or have some space to work. Now, depending on what you're making, if you've got a really tight space that you're working in, you don't want to have just like a ton of wire every which way. So you need to find the smallest amount you can get away with, but you know, you don't want to be like, here's the light right next to this, right next to that if you're trying to make it really clean. You can, it just gets harder. So like when you're beginning, give yourself like a lot of extra space. Also, like if I screwed this up, or like the one that's going around, if I'd screwed that one up, I could still clip it off here or here, strip, and then go again. So giving a longer line gives you some more space.
They also sell liquid electrical tape.
Do
which
they? I
is-
haven't tried that.
Yeah, it's really awesome.
Does it just paint on?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is it like latex?
It's sort of, well, it's,
Basically.
it's done sort of like the rubber cement, where it's got the
Oh, like pull out
brush
brush?
inside in the cap.
And you can get it in different
And it comes
colors.
in colors.
Yeah.
You can get it black,
Ooh.
blue, green.
See, I shouldn't be up here. I'm learning
Yeah.
something.
That's just being in a
It's
job.
like $7 at
It feels
Home Depot.
All right, I know what I'm gonna pick up.
And I was gonna tell you, earlier, the helping hands, you can order them from like Harbor Freight between $10 and $12.
Yeah, I remember it being really cheap. I just, again, I got this years ago, so. Also, the bottom of this is made to where I can kind of like screw it or attach it into my workbench, and that's usually how it is. Like this is actually really like unbalanced and unstable, so
And they've
that's
got
also part of why I don't want
suction
anyone
cups.
up here. I'm not gonna have anyone actually do one because one, I don't want you breathing fumes, and two, I don't want you to like burn yourself. But they make different styles of them. I know that
Yep.
probably have better bases designs. So I guess when you're looking at them, I didn't know when I bought this, but try and look for one that has either a base that you'll be able to screw in, or just a wider base. Because if you want the hands or to move the glass in a particular way, it can get unbalanced really fast. So
Some of them are suction cup also.
Yeah. Some of them also are separated. So where both the glass and the hands are separate from the actual.
oh yeah, you can get ones that are just hands. I've actually I borrowed a friend's that just had hands for like a really elaborate thing I was doing, and I just had everything kind of rigged up and it was holding different parts. All right, again, we're just gonna kind of tap until it melts. And it takes a minute for the wires themselves to heat up. Also depending on where you touch it from the soldering gun. And mine tend to be a mess. I actually don't have any depth perception. I lost it all when I was younger. So I can't usually tell how far something is from me, which makes this extra challenging. But that means if I can do this, anyone can do it. All right. And usually you want to wait a minute before handling them because they can be hot, but I've just got used to knowing where not to touch. But I'll tell you, the first time you forget and you touch the metal part while it's still hot,
You don't know.
you won't forget again.
Try doing it as a child.
It's probably good that my parents weren't like, you know,
I did
hey.
it too and burned the webbing out of my hand.
Well, I did enough damage with glue guns when I was younger. All right. And it cools really fast. Like this is already now room temperature. You also don't want to ever slide this on immediately because again, if it's still really hot, it's going to start shrinking and bonding to it and get weird. So the idea is we will now slide this guy over this horribly messy bond that I've made. And you want to make sure that it covers the metal and then a little bit onto each side because again, as it shrinks, you don't want to just have enough. So I tend to do a little extra. Then, can you guys see it? Mm-hmm. All right. So you should see it start to shrink up, get really tight. Now also when you're doing this, if you've got a lot of other, like your switch is nearby or your lights are nearby, whatever your array is, sometimes this can, like if you heat gun, you get too much heat on your switch or something like that, you can screw it up, like the plastic switches I handed around, like I could potentially like melt some of the plastic. Again, another reason why I like to give myself enough like wire to work with so it's not right on top.
You can actually use just a very hot hair dryer. You
Yes.
don't need to use a heat gun all the time.
You can also do like a match
Or
and
lighter.
just kind of like,
Yep.
or a lighter, yeah.
Stove top?
A match, you know.
Yeah.
If you're the 1800s.
If you're, well, who doesn't match like this? I was thinking lighters. You can rub two sticks together, but it just takes a little bit of heat. You know, when you pass that around, you guys can kind of feel. So this is considered to be like much cleaner looking, professional. But again, if something's totally messed up, not working, you can just clip through it, take it off, start again. So that tends to be how I like to work with those. So does this make sense so far to everyone? Does anyone want to try stripping this larger wire, which is theoretically easier to strip, before I move on to anything else?
Now I got a question with this switch. Can it go on either side? Can it go on positive or negative? Or
I haven't done a lot of wiring where there's like, I think if you have a switch that has like circuit boards in it, like one that might have a timer or a dimmer or something like that, you actually have to be more careful with it. But in my experience, like for these guys, or even the ones that like are a 3-prong switch, I never know, like I've put them in both ways and I've never had any problems with it.
okay.
So
It's just the
probably
connection
technically there's a,
Yeah. It doesn't matter unless there's things inside of it.
I think it only matters if you start getting into like some circuitry stuff and then you'll want to follow the flow for sure. But these guys can go either which way. It's open or closed and that's it. So, no one? You've never really these? All right. Then we're going to move on to resistors. Oh wait, actually, I'm going to show you guys something else before I get into resistors.
Wait.
Let's pretend.
New idea.
Well, okay, resistors are going to get like, you're getting into math and figuring stuff out or whatever. So let's say you don't want to like dive fully into that, but you want some lighting arrays, right, for your rigs, but you're like, I don't want to do the math and figure out stuff. I want to show you guys how to repurpose some things. And this is a trick that I do just when I don't have time or whatever. So it's not the cheapest way to do things by any means, but is a quick and no brain kind of way. So if you go to like an auto parts store or whatever, they make like dome lights, right? So these are the lights that go in your, you know, like the map light, like I can't see in my car and I replace it, right? This is like a smaller array. They make bigger ones. They do like little tiny guys. There's all sorts of lighting rigs that you can get to rice out your car in different colors. They come like in store, you get to test because you want to see how bright it is, right? Anyone that has a button like this means that they have already made a circuit for you and there's batteries in there already. So this is what it looks like out of the box, right? It even has like a sticker on it and you can stick it to whatever. So the cool thing about this is if you don't want to think about anything, you could just grab one of these and add it to your costume. Now, obviously this is all close together. Using what I just did where you like splice wires together, if you need something to be longer, you can just essentially cut into these wires and extend it. Now, this is done, I don't know if you guys can see the top of it. They essentially just solder the wires to the top of these 9-volt batteries because it's for demo purposes. So usually what I do is I either just take this entire lighting part out because I know basically what this tells me is that these lights work fine with 9-volt batteries. I don't have to add resistors, I don't do anything fancy. So I'll generally take this and then I will go and buy a case for 9 volts. And again, they make these in all different shapes and sizes. They have ones that you just like, they kind of snap onto the top of a 9 volt. This one, your 9 volt snaps in, so if this is like for a prop gun or whatever, I could mount this inside of it and it makes changing them in and out easy. And again, you would just solder to these guys or connect to these guys like we did the wires. So switches and wires, I guess I should talk about how to solder to those. If you guys can see this, do you see how there's little tiny holes on the top of that? Down? Better? Holes. So there's tiny holes in that, and look at the switches you guys have, or the ones that went around if they're still out there. You'll see on these, there's also little holes. So the way you attach to this is the same thing I said where you take and twist and make a hook, but you want to run it through this hole and make a hook and then twist after it. So if you pretend the holes here are essentially your other hook or the other loop of the wire, that's how I twist and attach them, and then same thing. I'll touch the soldering gun to the bottom of it, and then just hit it with solder. Now, in the beginning, if you're a little sloppy with solder, or you have a really tiny switch where these heads are closer together, you can put like a piece of paper, or I'll usually take like electrical tape, and if I want to make sure nothing gets on this guy, sometimes I'll kind of tape him off like that. So if I drip solder or something like that, it's not a problem. Because if you connect metal between these two guys, it's essentially bypassing your switch and it'll always be on. So you want to make sure if you're connecting to a switch that one wire connects to one to the other, and near the two shall touch. And you would do the same thing for this, like if you're using the heat shrink, you make sure you have a piece big enough to go over that head, you slide it up the wire. And usually I'll just slide both on at the same time after they're together, and then heat gun it and it'll shrink and kind of make it. Yep.
Have you ever thought about using the solderless connections?
What is it?
Solderless connections?
I have not done anything with those.
They're a crimp on, it's kind of like what you use in cars.
Oh, okay.
And so instead of twisting your wire through, you slide it in, it has a stop inside of it. Then the same stripper you have, the other end has color codes on it. Red, yellow, blue, I think it is.
Yep.
And it correlates to the size for wire size. And so when you go to crimp it, you slide the wire and you crimp it and you just slide right over the end. And it makes a very finished end to it.
Well, that sounds nicer than mine. I'll have to try.
Well, for expedient.
No, that
way
does seem
also.
faster.
And the kits you can buy for the solderless connections come with that stripper and crimper
Oh, nice.
right in them. So, and then when you, as you use them, you can just go buy the parts that you're using and refill your container.
Cool. No, I will have to do that. I have to put together a shopping list, y'all. Yeah, I tend to, and again, this is something, like I said, I'm kind of self-taught, so a lot of it's like, this is how I connect it, this is it. And again, talking to people, I get to kind of learn new things. So definitely not like, I'm the expert and this is how things are done. This is how I've learned it and how everything works, and I've been able to do some cool stuff with it. So that sounds a lot handier. So I'm going to have to try some new techniques. But yeah, does that kind of make sense on how to either repurpose something you could find or like kind of modify it, and then you don't have to think about like what battery do I need, what LED, that kind of thing. Does that make sense? All right. Now, the math. So you guys want to make up your own thing. Maybe this isn't what you want. You have a very specific thing you're going for. It's too big, different space. What we're going to get into is something called resistors. So, our lovely assistant. Here's my cool diagram again, right? We have our battery. We've got a switch. The resistor goes before the LED. and then back around. So what resistors do is resist. Their name might imply that, right? So let's go back to the water analogy, right? If we're using the example of those tiny lights that I have that are for 3 volts worth, they take 3 volts worth of power, and we take our 3-volt battery out, we put in a 9-volt, right? So that's 3 times the power coming through. It's going to be a tsunami, and it's going to blow out your light. And it's not as dramatic as, it's not like it blows up. It might light up for a second and then never light up again. Sometimes you'll get like a sound, but usually it's just like, hey, it's not working. I blew it out and I got to start again. Which again is why testing before you solder everything together is nice, because nothing's worse than like blowing something out and then having to cut it out. That's never happened to me. So the way resistors work, if we're using water as the analogy, and again, this is just a magical analogy, it doesn't actually do it this way, but imagine you've got this flow of water coming, and then this is like a funnel now, right? So it makes it so it's not going to be hit by a big wave, it's like slowing it down, and you only get so much through. So it's going to take up the extra power from your circuit to make sure that it doesn't blow out your wire. It's only going to let through what you want it to let through or what you need.
So in other words, you can get a bigger battery that lasts longer.
And you don't have to blow up all your like bulbs. Also, if there's something, so let's say you can get into like different arrays where you've got like a battery and you can have ahead of a resistor something that takes more power, but then like there's like an equation like for all the power going through the circuit. You could have something that takes more and then you can have a resistor after it if you have something that takes less there. And again, there's a lot more calculations. I'm not going to really math you guys. But there's a lot of ways you can use them that kind of keeps that flow. But essentially, they're kind of blockages. They're like, we're going to slow this down so like everything's not washed away further down the line. So there are situations where you can do stuff ahead of them that want certain powers. Again, I usually use stuff where it's not that complicated of an array. I kind of get all, like if I'm making it from scratch, I can kind of buy the lights I want and they're all sort of the same. And then I can just do one resistor and then the rest is okay afterwards. But there are cases where you might have different things and you want to just power off with one battery. Super advanced stuff. So let's look at this guy. All right, I'm going to just send these around to you guys. So these are some really old Radio Shack resistors. If you guys will just kind of pass them around and look at them. Next up will be my diagram of a resistor. I'm going to talk about how you can read a resistor and tell, like if they're not in these handy dandy cases where it says what they are, like what, you know, if you just find one on the ground, like how you can tell. So this essentially is a resistor. They usually have 4 color stripes. There are cases where there are 5. Let's just pretend for base level stuff we're in 4 level, right? You always want to have either gold or silver stripe to the right when you read them. And then you look at the bands to get the number. So the first one is essentially a number, and the third one is how many zeros. And all the colors stand for something. So black is 0, brown, red, orange, this is gray, sorry I didn't have a gray Sharpie, and then a white. So these all stand for numbers. And then your silver or gold is basically like, it's a plus minus 10% or 5%. So again, for our purposes today, it's not as important, but it's kind of like how off the resistor might be from what it's going to take from it. So a sort of a smaller percentage. For these purposes, it's not as much of a problem. So let's use an example, this guy. So if we're looking at, and we're just going to ignore the last stripe. I think on all of these, they're all gold anyway. So if we look at the first 3, there's a resistor out there that is red, violet, and then brown. So if we look at it, red is 2. So we know the first number is going to be 2. Violet is 7. So we know it's going to be 7. And then how many zeros? So brown is 1. So 1 0. So that's 270, right? If we look at, there's one, I think these are all the ones I handed out, hopefully I'm not wrong. So if we've got like brown, black, green, so we know it's going to be 1, black is 0, so that's now 10, and then green is 4. So we'll add 4 zeros to it, and someone's got that up there. Oh, 5, sorry. since it's hard to do upside down and backwards. And again, now if we have like red, orange, brown, it's 2, 3, and then 1, 0. So 230. No, 330. This is orange, orange. I'm crazy. This should be a 330. So it's an orange, orange, brown. And that one's out there too. So that's 330. And then the last one's kind of a trick one. Again, one that's out there. So if this first one's brown, it's 1. The second one is green, which is our 4, I think. 5. Thank you. But then the black is where the trick comes in, right? So black is 0. So we don't add a 0. That's how many zeros there are. So there's none. So that's how you get 15. And that's kind of important to remember because you assume if you write it as a 0, you're going to have like a tiny guy and think he's going to be taking out more power.
Yeah, that is the question with the second one. So with the black one, does that, so the green's 5, so 5 extra zeros. So is that 5 extra zeros, or does that count the 0 from the black one?
It's extra after it. So whatever's here is an actual 0. So these work as actual numbers. This is a quantity of zeros you're going to put in there. So 0, 0 is none. Super misleading. It used to like trip me up all the time. So that's how you can kind of read. Now we know how to read these, but that number kind of means nothing to us so far, right? So let's talk about Ohm's law, equations. Everyone get excited. Sunday of a con and it's math. Let me get a pen. All right, so this is Ohm's law. E equals I times R. That's exciting. No, it's not. I hate math. Allison hates math. Look at her. Look at the disgust.
I've already shut down.
And so this can also become I equals E over R equals E over I. I never care about this. This never stuck with me. It didn't work. I had to learn it visually. So I learned it as a triangle, but my letters are different in the triangle. I'm going to explain why. So E is basically voltage, right? So I actually learned E as V. I is your amperage or current. That's the current going through. And so C for current, right? And then R is like your resistance or ohms. And ohms is kind of what, so the numbers we were doing before is how many ohms those resistors are. I know, don't glaze over, everyone hang with me for a second. So I learned it as this triangle, right? VCR. Maybe I'm just old enough that VCR means something to me. I don't know. But I remember it as VCR and it's in this triangle. And the way this works is the V is over top of these. So like, if I have to figure out what C is, what current I need, you can cover it up and you know it's V divided by R, right? And then it becomes math, it's visual. Same thing here. If I need to find out what resistance I need, it's V divided by C. If I need to find out what voltage I need, so what battery I need, I would do C times R, all right? Still, let's talk about what that looks like practically now, because it's still math, I know. So, here's the circuit. Those lights we were looking at earlier, right? They're 3 volts. Here, I can show you. Oh, maybe it's still up there. There it is. Okay, so when you order or buy LEDs, you can find online, it'll say voltage, it'll break down what it is, and it'll tell you how many like amps with the amperages and all that. It's written on them. When you order them, you can find them that way. So that's how you figure out what number you can plug in. So I knew that these were 3 volts. Which is actually, and again, I don't have to do math, it said on the thing when I ordered it, it was 0.02, right, amps. So I have this number, I have 9 volts. This is, instead of using that 3 volt battery, maybe I only have my 9 volt, right, and I want to ring it up. So here are the things I know. What I don't know is what resistor to put in there. So what I'm going to do, 9 volts. So I know going through this entire system is 9 volts of power. I know this is going to eat up 3 volts of that. So that means there's going to be 6 extra volts. That's the rest of my tsunami that this guy can't handle. He can't stand up to it, right? So once you figure out what extra, like what you need to get rid of is, that's your voltage. That's the voltage you're trying to like take care of, handle, protect your light from. So that goes up here. That's our 6, right? We know what this guy is already. And again, 3 volts. Go look at it, what that breaks down into for current, like how much current you can handle. So this guy is 0.02. And now we know, since we're trying to figure out the resistor, right, all we have to do is say, okay, 6 divided by 0.02, which I can't do in my head, but on a calculator, that takes us to 330, or 300, sorry. So we know we need a resistor that can handle, that's 300 ohms. So something to know too, like looking at, so we can like figure out what color it is or whatever. They don't manufacture every single size resistor in the world because that's crazy. So you can have resistors jerry-rigged together, like you could have like a 15 plus 100 if you needed 115 or something like that. They do make a 330 ohm resistor, which is out there somewhere. And that's a little bit more than what we need, right? We only need 300, it's taking 330. So like the earlier example, when I was saying if we had in that circuit a battery that wasn't powerful enough, the light would still light up, but it might be a tiny bit dimmer. So in this case, we would add into our circuit the 330 and just know that that 30 is going to, the tiniest bit of dimness, like it's going to make it a little dimmer, probably not even noticeable at that point. Now, if I put in a resistor that was resisting much more, like 500 ohms or something like that, then it's going to start making that dimmer. But you want to get as close to 300 as you can, but you don't want to go under because you might have too much current going through. Now, sometimes, you know, an LED might be all right, like maybe if we had like 290 or something like that, but you are risking like blowing it out. So it's better to go a little over and kind of stop that like water, the flow from going through to it. So yeah, that's the basic equation to figure out what you need. And again, if you have a resistor and you have a battery and you just don't know what kind of bulb to get, essentially, you do the same sort of thing. You just cover a different section of the triangle. Does that kind of make sense? Does that help make the math less painful? I like pictures. I like shapes. So that's how it worked for me. Because before that, I was like, I think that is the gist of everything I brought to kind of teach today. It's like an intro. Here's how to get your feet wet. The thing I recommend the most is to just give yourself a little project. Try and make a silly little light-up thing. Just go get some stuff and do, I don't know, I always would play around and just do like silly things like around my house just to see what would work before you like commit to like trying to put things in costumes, just so you get a feel of it. But I think, again, start out if you're nervous about like math, just find things that exist and kind of cut apart and like add a wire to add a switch in, or add a wire to make it longer to fit into like your staff kind of thing. Actually, Allison was wearing her Lulu costume earlier, and the staff for that we made really last minute, and that's what's in it. I didn't make a fancy light array. The gem for it was a yellow gem, so it could just be a bright white light behind it, and I was like, this is great. And essentially I just spliced in wires that were really long, and actually your button is even that button. It's midway down the staff, so I didn't have to buy a new switch. I literally just made the wires longer, stuffed it in there, and had like the battery so it would hang low enough at the bottom and like could
These are
Velcro
really
it.
bright too, so mine has like a gem on either side, and so I basically just glued it so it was vertical up this way, so it shone up and out both the sides, and it worked really well because this is like blinding.
I know you showed it disassembling it. Did you add the JST connector, or was that there? Because JST connectors are really useful for being able to take things apart.
They are. And actually, I'll pass it around so you guys can look at it. I left it in there. So this is the connector we're talking about, and essentially it's like a 2-prong little plug where you put your thing together. If you guys want to pass around and look at that rig. Yeah, so what I did for that is I cut it, I believe I cut it below the light but above the connector, and essentially just added all my wires there. Or maybe I did on the battery side. No, I did on the battery side, and I'll tell you, actually I think I added both ways. So I have the switch in the center, I added wire so the light could go up to the top of the staff, and then I added wire so the battery could be at the bottom where we could get at it and take it apart. Unless the battery's, I don't remember how I made your staff.
It's right at the
something
joint.
like that.
It's right at the joint.
Okay,
So when I pull the joint off in the middle,
it's there.
the battery's right there.
But essentially you can like extend it so you can kind of place things where you want. If you're doing like a space gun and you have a light at the end, you might want a long wire that you can hide, and then battery packs, there's usually more room like in the handle kind of thing. Oh yeah, sorry, I might have put it the other way. But yeah, I don't know, just, I don't know, cut things apart and put wires together, you figure it out. And again, if soldering, like you can always start just by like touching things together, by wrapping with wires. That works just as well. Hot glue, again, is harder to take off. I didn't learn a neat trick. So you'll notice, like, even in that ball we did, right? So it's kind of pointing one way. A lot of times you'll stuff things into it to kind of help disperse the light or spread it out. Doing hot glue kind of helps make the light less, like, directed, and it can kind of disperse it. So I've known people to do, like, if they're trying to light something from behind, they'll put a lot of hot glue over it, and it makes the light kind of go in every direction versus just being like a solid beam going out. So that's kind of a trick. Again, it's kind of in there forever if you encase it. But same thing with resin. So you'll see people do LEDs, like you could put one of these guys into like a resin mold of a gem that you're doing and just make sure the legs are sticking out and you can wire them. You just won't ever be able to change it. Now these guys have a really long life as long as you don't like burn them out by putting too much like energy through them, so make sure your batteries are right. But you can embed these and stuff. I tend to not embed stuff because I like to be able to change it, so I'll usually mount things behind a gem, or I'll make a gem and I'll kind of drill out a little space for them to sit, and I'll kind of like tape it to the back because I don't know, I like being able to switch it out if I change my mind or want something
Change
bright.
colors, whatever.
Hmm?
Change a color or whatever.
Change it, yeah, or just like, I don't know, I find something better and I'm like, this is a better light, or this does this thing, or I'm going to repurpose this way. I just tend to kind of do that. I just don't trust that things will work forever, so I'm like, maybe I'll make it so it's changeable. Also, I find that when you drill into a gem, it kind of does the same thing, like helps disperse the light. Like if you sand something before putting a light behind it, and when you drill, it's essentially like sanding while it's making a hole. It kind of helps the light disperse better through that, versus just having like one beam. It's like putting a flashlight behind something that's clear. It's just going to go straight out, but if it's kind of foggy, it makes the whole thing light up.
Diffuses.
Yeah, diffuses would be the title. So no technical terms in this class. It's all just... But does that make sense? Does anyone have questions?
Where do you get that LED?
These I ordered on Amazon because I need them real fast for here. So you can get them on Amazon. I actually like, there's a website called Super Bright LEDs, and I'm not sponsored by anyone or anything, but I order a lot of stuff from there because they have everything, I feel like. They do stuff for like cars, they even have sections where you can be like, I have costume projects, and they'll show you like things other people have made. They also have some where they'll kind of pre-make rigs for you, or they'll sell you like a kit, so it's kind of everything you need. You don't have to worry about the math part, but then you can kind of practice putting it together. So kind of look and see what they have. They've got some good stuff starting out. I order a lot from them. But then, I mean, Amazon suppliers have everything. So if you know what you want, like, I was like, blue 3-volt LED, and then just went through and I was like, okay, what's prime that can get here fast enough? It's cheaper if you order stuff and make it yourself in parts, versus buying like preset rigs if you're going to use like, you know, a lot of lights. Now if you're just going to do one project and you only need one LED, the site I gave you can also just order like one versus like an entire bundle. But I tend to just keep them around for if I wanted to like try something or for funsies or whatever. So yeah.
It's really good to color code your wires to make sure which one's positive and negative when you're doing things, and they'll get mixed around.
Particularly if they're all the same color.
That's true. And you'll notice too with a lot of like, if you get a pre-done kit, they'll come with like red and black, so it kind of keeps it marked. I usually, because I'll be working just with whatever I have, if I run out of like colors, I'll just make a note, or I tend to actually put like a little Sharpie mark on my positives as I go along, so that I always know before I hook them up. Because again, if you put them together backwards, you can mess them up. So, and again, especially if we're getting into like the resistor section, if you put something the wrong direction, or you end up bypassing the resistor and just testing out, it can hit your light and kind of blow it. So just, yeah, that's a really good tip to kind of keep track of what you're doing.
Now, where did you get the multi?
Which, oh, this guy?
Yeah.
AutoZone.
AutoZone?
Like, you would not believe the stuff they make for racing out cars and how well they work in costumes, because they make like tiny, crazy bright lights, like,
That's price.
right?
Get out
And they have, I've used ones where they have ones that are like this big, and like my Vi hands, for example, actually it was my Demon Vi, had like this, had to have these 2 glowing eyes and like all these other glowing pieces, and I was able to mount just a large array kind of further back, and it like bounced around on the inside and lit everything up. So you can find stuff that you can just stick in something.
Yeah, car stores are good. That's actually where you can easily get large gauge wires.
Yep.
For large current.
Yep. Yeah, other than that, like Radio Shack used to be my go-to because they would have where you could buy like a switch, resistors, da-da-da. Now you kind of have to go online because I feel like a lot of shops don't carry them anymore. Like if you're near a hobby shop or something like that, they might have it, but I don't know. I've kind of gone the way of the internet now and I have to order stuff in. Which sucks because I hate waiting. I used to like just walking out and being like, I need this resistor. I did my math wrong before and I have to go get it now I tend to try and stockpile like various sizes and kinds just to have them. And again, they're not that expensive, so I sort of have like at home a little like kit, and I'll go through and be like, oh, I need a switch, or I need this. Also with this stuff, when you order it, they tend to come in multiple packs. So even like the switches I had, like there were sets of 2 and that kind of thing. So I always end up with extras, and then I just use them for friends' projects or whatever. Does everyone feel maybe a little bit better about wiring? Like it's less scary now? All right. If there's any more questions, otherwise I don't have anything else today. I'm sorry. Cool. Well, thanks, guys. I will say too, if you liked this panel or this kind of panel, like tell the convention, like email them, or really any panels like you've been to this weekend or workshops. They've been trying to do more like hands-on workshops or things like this where it's like live demos, and just if this was great, let them know. If it was terrible, let them know. You don't have to tell them, or you can tell me, I don't mind. But then they'll know kind of who to invite back, or if there's topics you guys want to see covered, like I wish there was a class about shroom-shrammery, like then they can try and find someone to get it for you guys. So
They said, we said it on the panel this morning, talking about the convention.
yeah.
And they said go on their Facebook page, there'll be a question and answer thing so you can rate and give them advice.
Perfect. And they do take it seriously. Like part of the stuff we did this year was because of what people said last year. So it really helps out if you guys let them know. It was terrible. They'll be like, stop talking about math, Jennifer. If I see comments like, hate math, no more, I'll know.
It'll be me. That's gonna be mine.
That's yeah. Like, how is why? Awesome, cool. Well, then that's all. If you guys have questions and see me around, just let me know. But I hope it wasn't too math heavy. Did you fall asleep?
I admit I zoned out at the math part. You got to teach me again later.
I think you're just gonna go here, fix this.
Yeah, probably.
So,
Why learn it when we got her close by?
Exactly.
does anyone want like a light up rupee? I have 2. You can come make your own. All right, come make one. I messed yours up earlier. You can get the other one. Come up. I'll have you guys actually put them together. I think I just gave you too much tape was the problem. And these are actually 3D printed. I cannot take credit for these. They're on Thingiverse. If you just type in like light up rupee, you can print them out. And these are actually like glow in the dark filaments, but I thought it'd be kind of a fun thing. And they're made to like just house a little battery and then. Cool.
You can print them out if you have a 3D printer.
Yeah, my work has one, so I was like, hey, work, I'm totally, this is for work purposes. Will you pop another battery out? That one. Oh, thank you, so good. Okay.
I'm in-house first.
So, guys.
And you can have any 3D printer you want.
That's one of the
Anyone you want. You can even put it in the garage, in the house that we want to buy, eventually.
These are going to be your batteries. Oh, here's one for you. All right, so take that guy, take this battery, you grab that battery. So you're putting the long end on the smooth side.
You can pay for it
That's
in
the positive,
cash.
right? Yeah. And let's try this.
Buy the house.
So kind of slap that on one side, slap that on one side. I'm going to cut you another small one for the other. There you go. I think the trick is just not to have tons of overhang. Too much. And again, when these die out, you'll have to open it up and tape a new battery in there. But just stick them in and then they should fit together.
But I didn't want to leave Rip and Sister's house, so I'm not going back to her house.
If they don't, I take no credit. I didn't. I borrowed another 3.
Forever.
And they probably take like a good like jam in. Fancy. And I went with blue because they're worth more than green rubies, right? Oh, I'm just weak. Oh, it might just be like a weird print. Wait, let me see.
Sneak out while you can.
Yeah, here it is. Thanks for stuff. Let's try this guy. Ta-da!
Thank you.
There you go. Thanks for coming, everybody. I really appreciate it.
All right.
Fire and
Good
stuff.
day. And thank you for teaching us.
Thanks. Thanks for bumbling through kind of what I know. That's crafting though, right? That's what you learn along the way.